Let's talk about longevity of homebrew and the effects of aging on homebrew. To do that today, we have lemon mead, and I didn't clean the bottle on purpose. It's got dust and cat hair everywhere on it. I mean, some people are gonna go, oh, that's disgusting. But you know what? That's how it is when you put something in the back of a shelf and you forget about it for, let's see, January 28th will be 4 years. 4 years. This is the end of November. So it's just shy of 4 years, but you know what? I didn't want to wait. I just wanted to do this, and get this out there. I found a bottle of this, 3-4 days ago?
Yeah.
It's gone.
Yep.
Yeah, it was good. But first, we got to get some into glasses. And for that, we need the pour cam. So we get asked all the time, how long does homebrew last at room temperature? And how do you store it? Do you store it at room temperature? And the answer is we always store it at room temperature until it's just about time to drink certain things. Like something like this, we're gonna drink this at room temperature. Literally pulled it off the shelf and we're gonna drink it. But like ciders and beers, yeah, we like those chilled. Now this is lemon mead. I started a little bit about it. I don't have a final gravity on this, but I remember it being a little bit on the sweet side, probably a 1020 to 1030 gravity.
I will link both the making of and the 1 year tasting in the description below. Yeah. So if you're curious to find out more about it, the before times, it'll be available to you.
Right. And it is 15.5%, by the way.
It is. And I remember when we first made it, and even after the 1 year,
we didn't like
the words lemon pledge.
Yep, we didn't like it.
Came to mind.
It is gorgeous, though. I mean, the color on this is amazing.
It looks like tea.
I don't know how it got such a dark color. Is it possible that there's some oxidation going on? Yes, absolutely. But I don't think so, because every bottle that I've seen has that same color, and I remember it being that color years ago.
Yeah, I'm thinking it's the honey that made it dark.
Yep.
And I don't recall.
I don't remember.
I'm probably orange blossom.
But that's not what this video is about.
No.
This was just our example. Something to drink while we're talking,
So there is this misnomer about aging mead, and some people go to the extreme that you can't even drink a mead until it's at least a year old.
Yeah.
And then other people say, after 2 years, just throw it away.
Yeah, I've actually heard both of those statements.
And both of those statements are equally confusing to me, because I've had meads that we've made ourselves that are perfect nearly right after fermentation is complete, which could be as little as 3 weeks.
I'd hazard to say 3 weeks is probably pushing it. 6 to 8 weeks.
Sure.
Yeah.
You get my point, though. That's far from a year.
Oh, absolutely.
And then this is nearly 4 years old.
I also wanted to show you, there's a clip that I'm playing right now that I recorded on my phone the other day from the one that I found. That bottle is a reused bottle. The cap is horrible. It's just a screw-on cap, reused.
Yeah.
And I just tasted this one. It tastes exactly the same.
Yeah. There's
no difference. So the idea that you have to do certain things, yes, you do. To make something last a long time, you have to do certain things. You have to be clean. Whatever you're using has to be sanitary, and you have to have a good seal. These particular bottles, the swing tops, make a really good seal and a good screw cap if you put it on there tight enough without, you don't have to like monkey grip it, but you need to have it on there tight enough. And as long as it was a good bottle to begin with, it's going to make a good seal.
Yeah.
We've never had a problem that way. A lot of people do freak out about that, and they think like you have to keep it in the fridge and things like that. You can if you want to, but here's the thing. We actually did a test on this. If you keep homebrew in the fridge, it's not going to age as quickly.
It retards the aging process.
A lot slower. So like a year of aging in the fridge might be like 2 months not in the fridge kind of thing. I mean, I don't really know the number, but it's a lot slower. Okay?
Now, what do we mean when we say aging beyond just the time frame? And that's a good question. And one of the things that we have learned through our years of homebrew and aging meads, if they even last that long, is that the longer we let them sit in the bottle, the more rounded out the flavor becomes. Right. It becomes more melded together. Mm-hmm. So if you have some sharp, prominent notes, they tend to come
like
down
lemon
a notch.
pledge.
and some of the more subtle notes are elevated. And so you get a fuller experience without discordant sharpness, if that makes sense. I keep going to music when I try to describe mead, and I don't know why.
It's okay. Something I'd like to point out with this particular one. We didn't like it before. I'm learning to like lemon, so some of my tastes have changed since we've made this, but it was very lemon pledge. It smelled like lemon pledge, and it tasted like lemon pledge. Today, it tastes like something that I did not think I would use to describe a mead or wine, but some of our audience members do. They say it tastes like a brandy. And it does. It actually reminds me of a brandy. Not quite as strong in the alcohol department. Is there a crack in my glass? There's a crack in my glass.
How is there a crack in your glass?
It's a little tiny scratch, I think.
Yep.
It's on the outside. There's a little tiny scratch there. Yep, I can feel it with my fingernail.
All right, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah. Oh, well. I love these glasses.
So I can appreciate the brandy concept, and what comes to mind when I'm drinking this is smooth. That is the first word that comes to my mind. And I don't know. I can go from lemon pledge to smooth.
But it really did.
And it was the only thing that changed was that length of time.
Let's put it this way. This is one that I was ready to dump out.
Right. And if we had done that, we wouldn't be able to experience this wonderful beverage.
We wouldn't have this video to share with you.
That's right. And so this is something, this motivated us to create this video in the first place.
Yep.
And that is to kind of dispel the absolutes. Only the Sith deal in absolutes.
Saw that coming a mile away. Because if you didn't say it, I was going to.
Yeah. And
always and never are two words I'm starting to not use anymore.
They just don't work universally, okay?
Yeah. Generalizations are generally wrong.
Untrue. Well, I always say untrue, but you say wrong.
I say wrong. Wrong.
Now, does that mean every brew that you make that's kind of meh after 4 years will be wonderful like this is?
No.
No.
But it might improve.
But it would certainly, I would say, mellow out.
Depends. I mean, it depends what was wrong with it in the first place.
And one of the factors of this, and something that we hadn't tested because we weren't testing it at that time that we made this, was pH. And we know from our further investigation into pH that acidity in a brew is a stabilizer. It helps with longevity. It helps with preservation.
But it hurts during fermentation. So it's kind of a double-edged sword.
Right. So you want the pH to be in the appropriate range when you're fermenting. But at the end, when everything is all said and done,
it can be low.
If you enjoy the flavor profile, having it be more acidic is going to benefit the longevity of your brew.
Yeah, now that we're saying it, let me test the pH of this.
Okay.
I need a dropper thing.
I don't have a pipette, but I do have our baster. It's sanitized.
Yeah, I want to dry it out, though, because, I don't want to alter the reading with sanitizer fluid inside it.
You just take it from your glass?
Yep. Yeah.
You already got the green finger.
Oh, yeah. Today is a filming day, so we did like 4 or 5 videos already.
And the only downside, Brian, the only thing that Brian has negative to say about the pH strips.
I get a green thumb.
And a green finger.
And a green forefinger from holding the strip.
Yeah.
When the liquid hits it.
Because the chemical reaction that changes the color of the strip can be transferred to your skin. Does it last? No.
No,
just
it washes
wash your hands with soap and water. It's fine. Whoa.
It's going right back into turbos. Don't even worry about it. I made a little bit of a mess here. But yeah, that's pretty acidic.
That's pretty acidic.
That is, it's about 3.0.
Yeah.
3.0.
So it's not crazy acidic, but it's definitely...
more than it probably was when we started.
Yeah.
The whole process of fermentation actually is an acidifying process. It does make things become more acidic. We learned that with the Kill You. And that's, I think our Kill You video was actually what started us out looking at pH.
Right.
Because we learned like, hey, that turned more acidic than we wanted to really, really quickly. And that's what made it stall. So Don't worry. Kill You 2.0 is coming. I'm working on it.
And if you think about it, back in the day, and I'm talking about our ancestors back in the day, they would ferment stuff on purpose because they found out that that would...
It was a preservation.
Preserve it. And that was because it was an acidifying process. So...
Well, not just that. Alcohol is a preservative as well.
Right,
so
right. It has a double whammy.
The mix of the two. Yeah, but that's how wines and things like that could last a long, long time is because they had more acidifying agents in them.
Another thing to talk about in regard to wine in particular is that the reason why aged wines go up in price is not only because the production has to store those wines for that period of time and that takes up real estate, right? But also all the proteins, all the elements within those bottles or casks or whatever are constantly in flux. They're constantly changing, they're breaking apart, they're recombining and creating essentially a new product. And we see that quite brilliantly in this particular bottle.
It doesn't taste exactly like lemon. Like you can tell there's lemon, but it tastes more like a very rich, deep honey note with some smoky notes, even a little caramely notes in there, and lemon just coming through on the top. It's actually really nice.
A whole new thing.
Oh yeah.
That there is no way we can anticipate that this is what we were going to create in 4 years when we were making it originally. Now that we've gone through the process, we can say with at least some certainty that if we follow our recipe exactly and put it away for 4 years, we might have something very similar to this, which would be worthwhile.
Yeah. Now, the interesting aspect to this is before we used nutrients. This is before we used pectic enzyme. This is before we did any of the more modern techniques, and it still made a phenomenally good product.
Right. And is that shocking? No, and it shouldn't be. And I don't mean to be so violent in that sentence, but I've heard so many people talk about, oh, you can't do this. Mm-hmm. And it befuddles me.
I have a saying.
It befuddles me because if we as a human race have been fermenting things for
thousands of years,
centuries,
thousands
of years,
they didn't always have access to those things. Now, I don't like using that argument. I get people that say that to me all the time. They say, well, you don't have to use that because our ancestors didn't and they made perfectly good stuff. Now, they may have, but it was more chance than anything, unless they had a lot of experience at what they were doing. Now, let me explain. If you don't sanitize, it's not a guarantee you're going to ruin your brew, but it could happen. Now, 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago, when you were scavenging for food and you made something like this, if it came out drinkable, like as in didn't make you sick, and it preserved food and it was calories, you kept it and you drank it.
Yeah.
Whether you liked it or not, you used it. And that's the difference from then to now. Yeah. Today, people would say, I hear it every day, oh, I didn't like it, so I dumped it. They just didn't like it. There was nothing wrong with it. They just didn't like it. And I mean people dumping out 5 gallons, 10 gallons at a time.
It breaks our heart, honestly.
Yeah. But that's the main difference is today we have so much, and we're as a culture, as a people, as a world, we're much wealthier and more rich than our ancestors ever were. So yes, they did it without those things, but that doesn't mean that their product was as good as what we make today. And in most cases, I'm going to bet it was less good. But here's the thing. Even if it tastes like absolute crap and it makes you drunk, people will still do it.
Yep. Also, we have some documentation, but a limited amount of documentation of the very, very, very ancient recipes.
Yeah, very
limited. And more often than not, if it was something slightly unflavorable, they would simply add something to it.
Yeah.
They wouldn't dump it out. They would just keep adding to it until it was drinkable.
Yep. Exactly. And and we tend to do something like that when we do our flavorings and tastings. We take the base and we usually have in mind what we want it to be.
Sure.
So we flavor it, we add acids, we add tannins, we add sugars, we add fruits, we add spices to make it taste the way we want. But back in the day, that was done to cover up rotten, rancid, horrible, smelly just nasty stuff.
Yeah. If it didn't make you sick, it was still good. Let's just change the flavor.
I mean, think about it. One of the best condiments used in Rome was garum. It was literally rotting fish guts. And that was better than the food they were putting it on.
Think about that for a moment.
And that kind of puts into perspective how good we have it today. That kind of does. I mean, that's how I always look at it. I'm not saying that they all ate or drank bad food and bad drink, but I think they would have suffered through it and put up with it more than we do today. I think their tolerance for things that didn't taste perfect was much higher than it is than we have today. That's the gist of what I'm saying.
It was a thing of necessity.
Mm-hmm.
You could starve.
Right.
Or you could eat something slightly unpalatable.
And, we've gone the full gamut of like super simple to a little bit more advanced. There's still a few things that we just don't really choose to do and we haven't found a need for them yet. But I like to think that if our ancestors 5,000 years ago had access to sanitization and they knew why they needed it, they'd use it.
Yeah.
If they had access to yeast nutrient, they'd probably use it. If they had access to refined honeys and things like we use today versus grabbing the whole hive and putting it in a bucket, basically, I think they'd do that too. So to say that's how they did it, it's good enough. Well, if you want to do it that way and the archaic methods and things like that, I have zero issue with that. But you're setting yourself up for a lot more difficulties and failures in the long term. And we've learned that ourselves by having this channel.
Sure.
We tried to do things as super simple and basic as possible, and we've had some successes with it and some failures with it. And we learned a lot along the way about what you need and when and why. And I think that was the key.
So getting back to aging, I want to clarify something that I may have dismissed at the beginning, and that was the bell curve of aging. This is an actual legitimate thing.
Yep.
But like all things that are measured, not everything fits nicely within those parameters.
True.
This particular beverage extended beyond the realm of the average bell curve.
Right.
And that's part of the problem with averages, is that they don't encompass everything. They just encompass.
Well, average is average. What we're
average.
talking about is a mean. There's a distinct difference. That's why, like, people say that the average life expectancy in the Middle Ages was 35. That's only because most people died at childbirth.
Yeah, it was the infant mortality.
So when you
rate
have a
that's
zero number of years compared with 50, the average is 25.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that people only lived to 25 years. It just means that was the average. But the mean was much higher.
Yeah.
But same with this. And I think what she's talking about with that bell curve is it's not a sharp bell. It's more like a gentle slope. It gets better and better and better and better and better. And at a certain point starts to plateau. And what?
I was waiting for you to stab me
starts to plateau and maybe stays there for a while and then slowly comes down. It's not like at 1 year it's getting better, 2 years it's good, 2 years and 1 day it's crap. It's not like it doesn't do that.
Not how that works.
I mean, even milk doesn't do that with expiration dates, you know?
You know that, right?
You do know, like, expiration dates on milk don't actually mean it's bad.
Expiration dates on everything.
I know a person that literally at midnight when it on the date would throw it away because it was no good now. But it was good 5 minutes ago. But anyway, so
if we take the mean mead is going to fall roughly at the apex of the 2-year mark. This one,
well, see that
scooched towards the other end of the spectrum. It's not 2 years; it still had to go.
The research that I have done says that things are usually still improving at 2 years. By the time they get to about 3 years, they're probably not seeing much improvement at all, and past 3 years is when they may start to decline. But it could take 5 more years for that declination to actually have an effect.
Sure.
So that means you could literally have something that's 8 years old, and only now you're noticing, oh, this might not be as good as it used to be. So that's what I'm saying. Like, don't believe that 2 year, 3 year, 4 year thing. I think things improve up to about 3 years. Some up to 4 years, some up to 5. Some might be less. And you can't know.
Right.
Is the point.
And that is the biggest takeaway from this, is that there is no carved in stone, this is the drink by date.
Right.
Now, if you're like us, it's a rarity that something actually makes it to the 4-year mark.
Yeah, we have to
for you
literally hide
even
them
know.
or have a memory that we hated it.
Right.
Like this.
And that was the situation here. And I didn't dump them all out. And so Brian tasted it and he was like,
Yeah, I pulled one out. I don't know what made me
happened?
even taste it.
I don't know, but I'm
I think I
glad
was
you
just
did
like,
because this
what
was
the heck? I'll
fantastic.
try it.
Now, my caveat, and a pretty strong caveat at that to this whole conversation, is this is in regards to full bottles.
Yeah.
Okay?
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Once
God,
you
yeah.
have a headspace of this much, that is going to create
You got
an
weeks at most.
oxidation situation. And oxidation, I can't even say the word.
Oxidation.
Thank you, is not your friend. It's going to, in most cases, cause off flavors and even make it taste kind of flat. That's the best descriptor I have for it.
We had one that it was a bottle like this, and it had about that much in it, maybe even a little bit less. And it sat on the shelf. It was a really good mead when we first made it.
Just meh.
And after like 6 months, we tried it, and we were like, ugh. It didn't taste like anything.
It just
It lost all
meh.
flavor and just became meh.
Right. So it was very disappointing because we had that memory of how delicious it was, and we were savoring it and saving it. And
Yep.
don't do that. Just drink it and enjoy it.
If you really need to store it for a little bit, put it in the fridge.
Put it in the fridge.
But even then, some people say days. I say a few weeks at most.
Yeah.
We have a couple of them that have been sitting in the fridge with like half a bottle for like 3 or 4 months. And honestly, they're still good. They're not as good as they were, but they're still like 90% there.
Yeah.
Unless I taste them side by side. By the way, interesting note, aeration, oxidation, and oxygenation actually mean different things. I don't remember what each of them means. Somebody told me that recently, and I went, oh, wow, didn't know that. They are similar, but not exactly the same, and it's a very scientific thing, and I'm not going to get into it, but
Sure.
use whatever word you can say.
But the oxidizing of the brew is what
Yes.
we're trying to avoid.
Right.
Just like any other, like even in your own body, you don't want to oxidize your cells because it causes problems.
Well, oxidation is just the breakdown and
Yeah.
decay. It's a natural decaying process is what it is.
You don't want that.
Yeah, you don't want to decay your mead. I mean, come on. Ways to store things safely, though. We've found that as long as you fill it really, really good, like leave very little headspace in the bottle, and use a good seal. Like I said, a good screw cap, a good swing top. Corks work too. We don't do a lot of corking for...
But we probably will.
Yeah, because North Mountain sent us some stuff to be able to do corks
Some fun
and
toys.
foil wraps and
Fancy.
even like the heater thing to melt stuff onto it. And we have not even explored those things yet.
I know.
We're pretty much waiting until after we come back from visiting Fermentis.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, did we mention that we're going to visit Fermentis in France and Belgium?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're fancy and schmancy.
That's right. North Mountain Supply is bringing us. Gonna go hang out with the yeast makers for a few days.
I'm pretty excited about
I
that.
know. I'm really excited. We're leaving in like 2 weeks.
My brain can't wrap around that.
Yeah.
But let's get back to aging, shall we?
Yeah.
I feel like we've dispelled some myths, hopefully.
I'm just trying to think of some other questions that people have about aging all the time. Don't do it cold. Oh, don't ever put a bottle like this on its side. There's no reason to. The whole bottle on its side is for corks. And corks only. And it's only for real natural corks, not synthetic corks, I think.
Yeah.
Because it keeps them slightly moist. Now, one caveat to corks are oxygen permeable. Very little. So that means you are going to get what's called micro-oxidation into your brew, which means if you keep something in this kind of bottle or a screw top versus a cork, it will be different in a few years. And that may be part of where some of the idea that after 2 or 3 years they go downhill comes from, because micro-oxidation may have changed it enough that they don't like it anymore.
It could be.
I don't know, because we don't do it.
This is an area topic that I haven't researched, but I know
I've done a lot of reading.
I know that wines typically are corked naturally and laid on their side to encourage that development.
Yep.
Where I don't believe any other
Not so much with
alcohol.
meads and ciders and beers, no.
So that is something to consider.
Right. And I've even seen a lot of wines actually, not wines. I've even seen with like a lot of meads and beers, especially, if they do a cork, sometimes they'll do a bottle cap on top too, or a swing top on top. Did you ever see that where they seal it up? So that means they don't want that micro-oxidity. Now you got me doing it. They don't want micro-oxidation. Here, you're having more. This bottle's going bye-bye.
It is lovely.
It really is.
Do we need to talk more about the flavors we're getting from this?
I think we should. And this is going to be the final pour because there's just too much stuff in it for my taste.
About that, this was before we had the extended remix of letting it sit.
Yeah. So we get some waste.
We joke about me saying, let it sit all the time. But it's really not a joke. We're doing that to try to encourage you to let things sit. And what we've done now, before
months
this was done, is that even when we're done, completely done the final tasting, everything, we let it sit for months in the final carboy. So that way, all that sediment, all that gunk can sit on the bottom, filter out, reformulate as it tends to do, and get out of there. So that way, when we finally bottle, it's a much clearer bottle and there isn't so much sediment on the bottom.
We did a crazy, silly bottling day video that was just a lot of fun and snacks and drinking, and it was fun.
It was chaos.
But we do that months later. Like, just for example, we had a bottling day just the other day.
Yeah.
Showed a picture on the community post, actually.
Yeah.
And
the eldest was January.
Yeah. It was January of 2024. So that just tells you 11 months ago, we did the tasting of it.
Yeah.
Which means it's been sitting in that same fermenter after being racked, after being adjusted.
And we just bottled it.
And we just bottled it 11 months later.
Now,
and on that post, sorry. On that post, people are telling me, oh, you just reminded me I have something that's been sitting for a year and a half, 2 years.
And that's completely fine.
All good.
As long as it's under airlock.
Now, one person said it was still on the lees after a year, and I said, you might want to start racking that. My understanding, and from what I've seen, is a few months on the lees doesn't really change much. After that, you may start seeing a degradation in flavors. It might start affecting it a little bit. So I don't like to go that long. I usually like to, we'll push it until it's tasted, then let it bulk age.
Yeah.
Because it's already clean.
Yeah.
Let it fall out. All the stuff that's falling out there is not technically lees. It's actually proteins and sediment falling out. Lees is dead yeast and things like that. That's long gone by the time ours gets to bulk aging.
Yeah.
I don't think we've ever actually described that. So that actually makes sense to say. I think that was good.
Now, I have a request.
What's that?
Can you please take us on a trip?
Sure. Now that I've swallowed. All right. I need another sip, though, if I'm going to do that.
We've already talked, I think, in depth. Oh, wait. Where's my white card? About the color and the aroma.
It's a pretty color.
It's color.
Beautiful.
And like I said, it's very reminiscent of like a tea.
Yeah, it really does look like a tea. Okay, as for the trip, when it first enters the tongue and enters the mouth and hits your tongue, I get just the slightest hint of citrusy lemon sharpness. And then it goes sweet. The honey floral sweetness comes through, but it melds with the lemon so beautifully because they're both like this floral citrusy thing. Beautiful there. And then in the mid palate, the richness of caramel and smokiness comes through. Towards the end, I'm getting a little bit more of the acidity of the lemon again, which makes it a nice clean finish, but I still get a hint of that caramel smokiness on the long exhale that stays with you for a little bit. Really complex, really long journey on this one. I mean, that's why when I tasted it the other day, I was like, holy crap, we got to, and she's like, we need to do that one. Because I think she saw my face.
Yeah.
And normally I go, it's all right. This was like, whoa.
He was taken aback.
Yeah, because I did not like this one when we made it. I did not like whenever I found a bottle, I was like, can we just dump that out? She's like, no, I like it. I'm like, okay.
So one note that Brian didn't describe that I think is in there is I'm still getting the alcohol. And I think that comes later. And we were talking about the sharpness notes. I think the alcohol is kind of melded in with that.
I'm kind of desensitized to that, though.
That's fine. This is still a 15.5%.
Yeah, it's got a good amount of alcohol to it. But when I say desensitized, I tend to drink whiskey straight, neat, no ice, no nothing. So I don't notice the alcohol burn as much in things like this.
Oh, I'm not saying it's a burn. I'm just saying it's part of that sharpness later on.
Let me see if I can find it.
I was nodding to you as you were just going through the Tour de France there as a bobblehead.
Yeah, I saw that.
Because I was like, I agree with that. I agree with that.
I mean, I guess the alcohol might be adding to the acidic element a little bit, but I'm not getting ethanol taste.
It's not like some people have said, oh, it's like rocket fuel. No. It's not like that at all.
Oh, no, you would not know this was 15.5%.
Yeah, I think you would be drinking a whole bottle as we are.
Like we did.
And then try to stand up and be like, oops.
We had a comment on one of these where we did a talk like this and we drank a whole bottle. Somebody said the fact that you can still put together coherent sentences at the end of that is impressive.
I don't know if that's impressive or
sad. Maybe a little of both. That's okay.
Little column A, little column B.
So, summation of today is longevity is kind of in the eye of the beholder. I would say if properly packaged, properly sanitized, properly made, even at its most basic, like this one, where we weren't using all the modern methods, we were just sanitized, clean, that kind of thing, you can easily get years at room temperature out of a brew. I'm not going to say how many, because that depends on so many factors. Will they get better? Probably for a long time, until some point where you're going to say, this isn't as good as it used to be. But you can't.
You can't.
It's very difficult to know.
But if you open a bottle and you sample it and your eyes roll on the back of your head, drink it. Share it with your friends.
I would say just a generalization, which are generally untrue or inaccurate or wrong, however you want to say it. Past 5 years, I might start to be a little skeptical. That's probably where I'd be. Like, this is 5. We might want to drink this one. But that's hard to say, too, because
I don't think we have any that
we don't have any. Polish meads, some of those are aged for 10 and 15 years.
Now, they are a whole completely different animal.
Completely different. And, yeah, I'm not even going to get into that because that is a whole other animal. I did some research. Wow. So even that generalization, there's the exception that makes the generalization wrong. But that's an idea. Past 5 years, I might start to get skeptical of it. But up to 5 years, I would still say it's improving or plateaued in general.
The takeaway from all of this discussion, I believe, is that if you're enjoying your brew,
who cares?
Don't let somebody else ruin that for you.
That's the funny thing about our channel. We're not out to win awards. We're not trying to be hoity. We're not trying to make like something that's going to impress connoisseurs and stuff like that. We're trying to teach the average person how to make cheap booze and enjoy it. I can teach you how to make alcohol that's crappy and tastes horrible.
But why?
Who's going to want to drink that? I'd rather something that's frugally made that tastes really good, like this. I think it was just lemon peels and honey.
I think so.
With some yeast in it.
And some water, probably.
Yeah, it
was diluted,
it's frugal. Obviously. It's inexpensive. And that's kind of the source of where our channel started. We made wines and meads for ourselves and just said, wow, we could share this. And we started. And that's really where it came from. The idea of the elitism and all that, we're not into that. We just don't do it.
So if you've enjoyed this discussion about aging meads and how the effect of time can aid, in this particular case, or not so much in other cases, brew, let us know what else you'd like us to talk about in the comments below.
And as always, guys, thanks so much for watching and have a great day.
Bye-bye.